Hey guys, welcome back to the Timber Forge. Today I'm going to be starting off a little mini series about how to add your very own custom mobs into Minecraft. So the things I'll be covering in this mini series is how to choose which mob to use as your base mob, how to add custom attributes and custom effects to your mob to make it a little bit more special, and how to apply custom models that you would have learned how to make in the custom item series, and how to apply that onto your custom mob and have it properly rotate and everything like that. Then I will also go over how to make your mob naturally spawn in a few different ways, and how to give it your very own custom attacks so that it doesn't just use already existing attacks in the game. And I will also go over how to make custom animations for your model and how to update the model to reflect certain states like taking damage. So with that said, let's start with episode 1, which will be focused on making the core summon command for the main mob itself. Alrighty, so let's get on with one of the most important steps for creating your custom mob, and this is choosing your base mob. So if you didn't see the custom item series where I chose the base item in that case was basically what I wanted to use in order to give the base attributes or the most important features of it. So in that case, it was more about like stackability or the enchanted model animation kind of thing. But in this case, what you want to think about when choosing your base mob, which is going to be the underlying mob that your custom mob is going to be based off of, you have to consider the important special attributes that certain things have. So for example, a pig is passive, so maybe that's something important you want. Or maybe you want to consider the hitbox. This is something you always have to consider for your custom mob because you can't really change that in any other way other than choosing a different base mob. So for example, in my Nether Mobs Plus data pack, the Crimson Serpent had a very small hitbox just for the head of the serpent, so I wanted to use a silverfish. And if you want it to be a pet, for example, then you want to use a wolf for the base mob because that's like the only one that will actually attack for you and can be tamed. Or maybe you want it to hover with a fire effect, then instead of implementing that yourself, you could just choose a blaze. Or even if it's something that would be easy to implement with something else, maybe you are too lazy to do that and you might as well just build off of an existing mob. So if you want it to explode on impact, maybe you want to use a creeper. Now, these are all things that you want to consider when you are choosing your base mob. However, there are other things that you do not want to consider, and examples of those would be the health of the mob. Don't not choose a silverfish because it has low health. That's something you could change later on. So you have to be able to recognize which things you should be considering, such as the hitbox, and which things you should not be considering, such as anything that you can change with NBT data. So if you go to mcstacker.net, this is a very useful tool for generating commands if you don't know all the syntax. You can see a lot of the examples that you could have. So if I just, for example, input zombie into here, you'll see all this stuff you could change. So you don't want to choose your base mob based on anything that you could easily change. See, as you can see here, max health, follow range, movement speed, attack damage. You don't want to base it off of that. Now, if you're looking at all of these base mobs and you're like, well, none of these has the attack that I want to do, then stay tuned for the next episode where I'll show you how to make your own custom attacks. But if you have something that is going to have an attack that could be based off of one of these base mobs, it's better to just choose a base mob that will make it so that you have to do less work later on. So now that you chose what you want to do, I'm going to be using the example of my Crimson Serpent from now on. So let's say I want a small hitbox, so I have to use a silverfish or endermite because those are like the only ones with a small hitbox and are hostile. So let's say I choose the silverfish. So now I can just input that into MCStacker and just get started, right? Silverfish. Now I'll show you the things that you need to have on there later on, but now let's get into the custom model. Okay, so the two main ways to put a custom model onto your mob is to one, just put it on the head of your mob, such as with this zombie here, or number two, you use a mob with an armor stand with an item on top. Now you might be like, well, why would you need another entity there with another item? That would cause lag, wouldn't it? Well, it's necessary when you have a certain mob that cannot display things on its head. So I tried using the same command, but for a silverfish. As you can see here, it says Minecraft Flint displayed on the armor items for the head. And for this one, it has the same thing, Flint, except it's also on the head. But as you can see, it didn't display the model. And that's because it has no actual displayable head slot. So if you are using something like a zombie, husk, stray, a skeleton, or anything like that where you can display something on the head, then it's better to use this model on the head because you don't have to add an extra entity. On the other hand, if you have something like this, you'll have to have a passenger armor stand with an item on its head. So it will create a little bit more lag, but it's not too bad since this armor stand doesn't have any real calculations being put on it, I'm pretty sure. So I'll show you what this looks like inside of MC Stacker. So let's say this was a zombie. All I would have to do is open up this head slot right here, just click the S, and then put in a model. So if you don't know how to make an item that has a custom model, make sure you go check out episode 3 of my custom item series where I show you how to create a model and assign it to an item using custom model data. But for this example, let's pretend that a piece of flint has the model on it with the custom model data of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if we have a silverfish like I actually do here, this won't work, so let me delete this. What I have to do is go down to this bottom left section here where it says passengers and hit the plus, and I will create a passenger armor stand. And then on the armor stand, I'll make sure that it is small. I will make sure that it is a marker, which means that it has no hitbox because you don't want the armor stand to block the hitbox of the mob. And then on the head, I will put the flint here. So flint custom model data of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now if we get this guy just to test this command and I use it, as you can see, the silverfish has the armor stand on top, and if I punch it, it moves with it. Now the only issue is that with this, the model aligns with it, but with a silverfish or any mob with an armor stand, the armor stand's rotation doesn't always match. So if I go into survival here, you might be able to see, yeah, as you can see, he's facing this way, but the armor stand is not actually turning properly. So you'll have to change that manually, and I'll show you that later on. But now that you have the model assigned and you have your base mob chosen, we can move on to adding all the custom effects and attributes onto your mob. And I'll also show you how to properly position the model on the mob. So let's get the rest of the attributes onto your custom mob now. So the important ones that you need to have are silent, unless you want to use the default mob sounds, but more likely than not, you're probably going to want to add either your own sounds or just not use those sounds. You want it to be silent, and you also want to make sure that it is invisible. So go over to active effects right over here, click show, and go down to invisibility, wherever that is. Here it is, invisibility, and just turn it on to like amplifier 0 or 1. Then go to duration and go to maximum, which I believe is 999,999. And then you want to click show particles to no, because you don't want it to be releasing bubbles just because it happens to be invisible to display the model. And for the model display, you want to make sure that it is small, just so it's easier to run the commands on it if you need to. You want it to be a marker so the hitbox doesn't interfere, and you want it to be invisible. And make sure, of course, that you do what I said earlier, you put the custom model data onto the head. And then from here, you could just mess around with the rest of these. So if you want your custom mob to have any of these effects, then make sure you turn those on. However, you probably, if you're going to do speed, you probably don't want to do it through here. You can just try to mess around with movement speed here. However, there's something very important for all of these. Here, I'll turn these ones on. As you can see here, for all of these ones that say attributes, it has changed from 1.16, I think. So I'll show you how to change that exactly. But anything in attributes here, be careful. You have to make sure that you change the syntax. So I'm just going to go and copy this just to explain what I mean by that. So let's get this pasted in. Actually, let's get a command block. So all of these are under the attributes section. So as you can see, it says attributes, and then it says colon, and then it goes with the square brackets and curly brackets, and it says name generic.max health, and this is in camel case. So this is actually different. So what you have to do is go to the attribute from generic.whatever, put quotes around the entire thing, and then change max health instead of having it be camel cased, you want it to just have max underscore health lowercase. So if the other one, for example, is follow range with a capital R, just do follow underscore range with lowercase f and lowercase r. So then go before generic and do Minecraft colon. So it's going to go from generic.maxHealth to quote Minecraft colon generic.max underscore health. So it might seem confusing, but just try to keep the two examples in your mind. This is the after, and the before was, and this is the before. So just try to compare the before and afters and see if you can just properly correct the syntax, since MC Stacker is just a little outdated, but that's just because 1.16 just came out. Okay, so this is my mob imported from my Nether MOBS plus data pack. So this is the actual command, and something cool about MC Stacker is you could use this import button. You just click it and paste in your command and press import here, and you're able to import it, and it just puts all the attributes back into the table here, so you could easily adjust it without having to manually type everything in. So this is my actual command that I used for my Nether MOBS plus data pack. So I'll walk you through everything that I have here. So these are just some coordinates that I added, and ignore no AI because that was just for the display. But silent, I don't want it to make silverfish noises. Death loot table, I am just setting the loot table to drop the drops that I want it to from the Nether plus data pack. If you don't know how to do loot tables, go check out my video on that. And I turned it so the custom name is not visible because I don't want it to show up when you're fighting it, because it's not a boss, and I only do that for bosses. And I set the custom name to Crimson Serpent because if you get killed by it, I want to make sure that it says killed by Crimson Serpent and not killed by Silverfish. I have the active effects of, this is fire resistance and invisibility, because I don't want it to burn because it attacks you with fire, and it would be pretty stupid if it burned in its own fire. And I gave it health of 20 because silverfish normally have very low health, so I upped its health. But if you up the health, you also need to up the max health attribute because then it won't actually do anything. And I also have the tag of Crimson Snake just so it's identifiable in your commands. That is also something that you really want to add, is for tags, make sure you add some sort of tag if you need your commands to access it. If you don't need your commands to access it, you don't really need the tag, but it's always good just in case you need your commands to do something with the mob. Then I have the attribute of max health and no other attributes. You could easily add your own attributes if you want. Just make sure that you change the syntax. And I have the passengers of an armor stand for the model, since you can't display it on the head of a silverfish. And that armor stand is invulnerable, you can't kill it. It's a marker, and it's small and invisible. And it also has the tag of Crimson Snake. Now, even though the silverfish and armor stand both have the tag of Crimson Snake, it's okay because I could differentiate by type silverfish or type armor stand in my commands. And then, of course, I have the item on its head. So that's it for the command. So now if I go over here, you can see that when I press this, the snake summons. Now, the model, I'll show you quickly how you have to orient the model in order for it to properly display. All you have to do is go into Blockbench and just move it around until it looks right. And it's pretty simple, but I'll show you it anyway. Now I'm in Blockbench, so what you want to do in order to properly display your model on the head of whatever mob you have, what you want to do is go over to the top right and click on Display, and then change on the left side here, instead of third person right, which it normally is on, go over to Head. And this is how it displays. Now, if you want better reference, you could change the reference model to a small armor stand because that's normally what you use. So all you have to do is position it in a way where it would be correctly positioned directly underneath your armor stand if you're using an armor stand. Or if it's on the head of your zombie or whatever, then you want to make sure that the model aligns. So the head would align with the head. So it's pretty simple, just move it around until you like it. And there's not much to it. So now let's get the proper rotation for the armor stand's model display. So as you can see, the issue we have right now is that when it chases after me, the rotation doesn't properly match. So watch the head and notice how it like slides sideways sometimes, and the head isn't always pointed towards me. Now that's an issue we have to fix, and we also have to fix the fact that the model stays after it dies. So I changed the entity tag to custom mob 1 for both the silverfish and for the model, just for this demo. So with that, this is a data pack. So if you don't know how to create a data pack, make sure you go watch my video on how to create your own data pack. And this is just the loop function for now, because there's only a few commands, so I'm just going to shove them all into the loop. So I'm going to make a long command, and then I'll explain to you what exactly it does and how it fixes the rotation. So just bear with me while I type it out, and I'm going to kind of partially explain it while I do it. So I'm going to do execute as all entities who have the tag of custom mob 1 that I gave to both the silverfish and the armor stand, but specifically I'm going to target the silverfish mob itself, and I will execute at the position of all of those silverfish. And then I want to store the result of this data get command that I'm going to run into all of the entities that are the type of armor stand. Type of armor stand. And the armor stand has to have the tag of custom mob 1. And it also has to be just 1. And the nearest one. And then I will run data get and then the location, and the location that I'm going to be storing this data is into rotation 0, and I'm storing it as a float, and it's being multiplied by 1 because I don't want to change the value in any way. And then I have to get the actual data command, so run data get entity at s. So it's a very long command, but basically what it is doing is it is running as all of the custom mobs, so in this case the silverfish that has the tag of custom mob 1 at their position, and it is getting the data. I have to add rotation 1 here, rotation 0. So make sure you add that. So it is executing as all silverfish at their position, that's a custom mob, and it is getting the rotation of that mob, and then it is storing that data into the nearest armor stand, which has the tag of custom mob 1. And so that's basically fixing the rotation, because it's forcing the rotation of the armor stand to match the rotation of the silverfish. I will have a full execute video eventually, but it's probably not coming anytime too soon. Okay, so now if I try it again, let's see. Okay, now it's facing me. Let's see if I go sideways. Yep, and it's not drifting sideways anymore. So the direction it's moving is the actual direction that it's facing. So now that that problem's fixed, we have to easily fix the problem of the model staying. And all we could do is just kill all of these armor stands that don't have the entity near them. So I'm just going to go execute as all entities tag equals custom mob 1 type equals armor stand, and I want to go at their position so I could see if there's a nearby entity. Then run unless entity at e type equals silverfish tag equals custom mob 1 distance equals, let's say, within a block. You could change that depending on what you want. Unless entity that, and then run kill at s. So unless there's a silverfish custom mob near them, it'll kill itself. So now when I reload, these should kill themselves. There we go, and they killed themselves. The only ones that are left are the ones from before I changed the tag, but that doesn't matter. So now if I summon it again, it should disappear. Yep, it disappears right after you kill it. So that's basically all you need to know in order to set up the basics of your own custom mob. Stay tuned for future videos where I go over how to make them spawn naturally and how I'll do the custom attacks and custom animations and model updates. So see you guys next time.